Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and The Adventures of Superman, Book of L, issue number 1. This was surprisingly good. I had a very hard time following along with it. I'm going to explain all that good stuff. First, let's talk about who made this comic book, and then we'll get into both parts of this story. So the writer is Philip Kennedy Johnson. Artist, Scott Godlewski. I looked at that name so many times and I still can't figure out how to properly pronounce it. Godlewski. Anyway, the colorist is Alex Guimarães, and the letterer, Dave Sharpe. I miss Dave Sharp. Cover artist is, the same people who did the interior art of the comic book. So fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I wonder if that's actually a selling point that Philip Kennedy Johnson has when he does a comic book is the interior artist has to also be the color artist. And if the colorist does it, then they have to do the front also, which is a fantastic idea. And if I had any pull in the comic book world, I would absolutely do the exact same thing. I would say, nope, I want them to see exactly what it looks like inside the comic book by the outside, by the very front cover. I want them to be able to help judge a comic book by its cover. Anyway, of course, Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. So there was no backstory to this. I had to actually go out, and this is something that I hate to do, and that right away shows my problem with the comic book from the very beginning. I read this entire comic book. There was no preamble. So there was no forward for this comic book. Nothing saying, well, this and this and this happened. Nothing like that. So, excuse me. And yet, this is not an issue number 1, even though that's what they're calling it. It's not. Because it's not the idea that it's based off of, oh, you don't have to read Adventure Comics number 1 and then continue going just to be able to read modern day Superman comic books. No, absolutely not. You should be able to jump on any comic book and by what's inside that comic book alone, have a good enough solid understanding of what's happening and who this character is, what's going on, all of that good stuff. At the very least, with a character as famous as Superman? I mean, I ran across characters in here, I have no idea who they are. Okay, that's for the most part to be expected. These two little super kids, like who are these kids? They're apparently not his. They're adopted somehow. Maybe that guy that they were showing in the beginning of this comic book. I don't know. But Phillip did a story prior to this. And this team did this story prior to this and somehow didn't think to explain what's going on. I shouldn't have to go back and read anything prior to understand what's going on now. And guys, I'm even talking about my argument is that even if it's in the middle of a 6-issue or the last issue of a 6-issue, it could be a mini-series or it could be a story arc, all right? You should have some idea of what's going on prior. I was reading this. I am so lost right now. The only reason why I have any bearing of what's actually happened in this comic is because of reading outside sources, looking at reviews. AIPT is a really good one. A couple of different things and trying to figure out what exactly is happening here. But it took a lot. It took like more than it should have. I usually enjoy just looking at a comic book and then going immediately from reading the comic book to giving a review about the book. But I had no clue what I was reading until it got to the action, which happened not fast enough, but it did happen. And then all of a sudden I was just like, you know what? I don't care, whatever. Hopefully in the later issues, they'll explain what's going on. But for now, I am so completely lost as to who this first character was. It's this character who's just sitting there. And I wonder if it's the same character who's locked up like Doomsday was locked up. It looks like a god. Is this actually the Anti-Monitor or the Monitor or the Anti-Monitor? I can't tell. I have no clue what I'm looking at here. Anyway, so this character is scraping, and he's apparently a last Kryptonian, but not Superman, not Kal-El. He's a different one. So there's a lot going on here, and he's got kids, and I think these are his kids from here that are on the Kent farm. There was so much flashback with Pa Kent on here between Clark taking up, and I did love this, the idea that Clark is saying things that his earthly father taught him. Then I'm just like, okay, so are his parents dead, and now in Philip Kennedy Johnson's because look, this is a thing that happens all the time with DC. This is why, again, I got confused. Well, they'll do Elseworlds comics and they won't even tell you it's an Elseworlds. You'll just have to figure that out on your own. Oh, this is completely separate from the normal time stream of what's going on in the DC universe. As it stands, there's two major runs in the DC universe, not even including the zombie and the vampire stuff, you know? Anyway, so I really thought this was like a future story where Lois and Clark have taken over the Kent farm and they left Metropolis and they're doing their thing out in Kansas, in Smallville, Kansas, right? But then the mom is still there. I'm like, okay. And then I see the dad is there. I'm like, all right, what the hell is honestly happening here? Like, you could have drawn Superman saying these things, or Clark, he's as Clark Kent now, saying these things with Pa looking over his shoulder and just going like that, maybe getting a little mush, right? Like in the Superman movie that just happened. Something, I don't know, whatever. But this could have been done so much better, in my opinion. Um, anyway, so yeah, I'm like, what timeline is? I finally realized that maybe this is the normal timeline that we're in. I guess, I suppose. I can't presuppose though. I have nothing to base this on unless I go back and read more stories that I'd have to find and buy and all that stuff. Anyway, when we got to the actual action and all these characters from War World jumped in, look, I loved me some Mongol. I know a lot of people don't like Mongol. Jim Starlin, the guy who created Mongol himself, doesn't seem to like Mongol very much, which is a shame. I told him, I was like, well, he's been in some great stories regardless. So there's that. And he's just like, I guess. He just didn't seem to care. But anyway, Mongol's minions show up. And I love the idea that I don't know if this is something that Phillip did himself, but I love the idea that they're actual peoples who look like Mongol, like the yellow skin and all that stuff, who are actually dealing with, like actually his servants and whatnot. If I remember correctly, the second episode of the Justice League cartoon even had robots there. Like War World was just a whole bunch of random people who were whatever. They didn't have any real story to what War World actually was. No people, no followers, no race that Mongol came from. Here, there's actually a race, there's a language, and there's an accent and all that crazy stuff. And I love that aspect of this. I don't know if I'm going to go back and read the other stuff. I may, just because I got so into the action of this, seeing these guys go at it with each other. There's a lot of talking, which is fine. That's something that Phillip does a lot in his comic books, so I'm used to it. By now, me personally, I'm used to the idea that there's going to be a little bit too much talking. When a war world is attacking, and they seem to be attacking him, and not even the world, you don't sit here and start having a conversation with Lois Lane, blah, blah, blah. You say, B, get inside now. She should know, right? But of course, it's Lois Lane. As much as I love the Superman comics, Lois Lane is one of the most annoying characters in the world. I will do what I want to do because I'm the press and free press, and you deserve to be slapped in the face by freaking Granny Goodness. You deserve to be pimp slapped so hard and your jaw dislocated so you can realize that no, you don't belong here. Go inside, protect your family. That's what you do. Your first job is as a mother. All right, and you're doing a horrible job of it, but that's what I understand of Lois. Here, Phillip kind of did that, but there's too much talking in between. He had to give her exact directions of what to do. It almost sounds like he's talking to an autistic woman. And yeah, maybe Granny Goodness did dislocate her jaw and give her a concussion. I don't know, but yeah, this woman is just she's trifling, Anyway, so he dictates to her exactly how to go inside and watch over the family, and he goes out to handle this with his son. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with the comic books now. It's one of those things where, I'm just going to mention on this just for the sake of conversation. I remember thinking to myself how upset I was when they made Superman's son gay. I want you to stop and think about this for a second. The idea that Superman, he has a son, he finally has a son, and he's not even fully Kryptonian, he's half Kryptonian. He's the best that we've got to continue the race of the Supermen, right? The Kryptonians. And this kid's going to turn out to be gay. They're going to make, like, I don't want to hear, oh, he chose this, or he was born that way. Shut up. Stop, stop, stop. I'm only talking about the way the writers did this because it's the writers who made him gay. There is no such thing as Superman or Superman's son. But when you just think about, imagine if you were the last of your kind and this was your only chance for your kind to continue. Mind you, Superman we're talking about. The greatest hero, if not of all of comic books, then of the DC universe at the very least. I mean, it's hard to argue against that, right? What else is going to protect the Earth from all the dangers outside? I know there's, like, Brian Michael Bendis showed that, no, not, yeah, it was Bendis who went and showed that Superman actually is going to live for a ridiculously long time, long after the Earth is destroyed and things like that. That's cool, but we didn't always have that idea. But the idea that the son that you finally had, just the child you eventually had, is not going to procreate, that we're just going to have some kind of a weird offside, like this is it for the most part, or he's going to have to surrogate or whatever, just all these nonsensical things, that really broke my heart to see. It really did break my heart. But this comic book is just another one of those comic books that kind of changed that for me, where it's like, honestly, who cares about Superman's son? I barely acknowledge that he exists because he's done nothing significant that I've ever seen. If you've seen something significant, cool. That's what the comments section is for. And go check out my Moon Knight review. I do read the comments, right? If you're going to be obtrusive and you're just going to be an ignoramus and you're going to say hurtful, angry things, I have no interest in you, and you could go to hell for all I care. All right. Talk like a decent human being, like I'm a decent human being who's just trying to figure out the world the same way you are. All right. And then I will happily read, even if you're being really critical of me, I'm happy to read those things. The moment you start popping off at the mouth, like you're tiresome and you haven't figured out yourself, least off life. So move on with yourself. But for the people who actually want to criticize what I'm saying, by all means. But it's funny, I read this where not only are there all these Kandarians and there's Mon-El and all these other, there's what do you call it, the evil super people, and no one, bow before Zod and all that stuff, and more and more and more Kryptonians keep on showing up. They were attacked by Kryptonians at one point. Like, what the heck happened here? This comic book really made me realize, especially with this new character and these two new, children, Superman isn't Superman anymore. Superman was Superman. The main thing about him was not just all of his powers and eventually he could fly and all that stuff after Namor did, right? No, he was really Superman because he was the last Kryptonian. He was the last son of Krypton. And that was amazing and that was unique and it was such a heartwarming story. And then they made it so that now actually Martian Manhunter is that guy, the last Martian, and so on and so forth. But for the most part, I haven't really been doing much good with Martian Manhunter anyway, have they? Soups isn't Soups anymore. So now it's like, who cares if he specifically can, is going to continue on a bloodline or not? Who honestly cares at this point? There are plenty of others who could pick up and continue the bloodline of Krypton, period, right? Yeah. That's one thing this comic book did for me, because I did have to stop and think about, after I finally figured out in general what's going on, I had to stop and I had to start contemplating what exactly is Superman, because he's been redefined, right? So many times that at this point it's like, who cares if his son is gay? Superman isn't the only one anymore. And his son didn't become the second. He's like even his dad is still alive now, according to the comics. So yeah, go figure. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. Pretty good comic. Please let me know, definitely use the comment section if you read the previous story. Let me know how you think of the comic continuing from what happened before. Did you like the previous story? Apparently it was acclaimed. That doesn't actually mean something. When peers are reviewing something, that's one thing, but it's you and me who I think have the most say, because we're the ones actually paying for these comic books, right? Paying to read and view these stories. So yeah. Anyways, that's going to be it for me. Like the video, watch an ad, and let me know what you think. Like the video, watch an ad. Yeah, Professor Bell, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.